My child, come closer for a moment, because something extraordinary is unfolding around you, even if your eyes haven't caught it yet. You are standing at the very edge of a turning point you never imagined could be yours. You may not feel it, you may not see it, but the air around your life is shifting. Something invisible yet powerful has already begun moving in your favor. And no, this isn't some poetic line meant to make you feel better. It's not a random guess, not a hopeful attempt to comfort you. It is truth, quiet, steady, and absolutely certain. There is a reason your spirit feels unsettled lately, as if something deep inside knows change is approaching but can't quite put its finger on what it is. You've been sensing things you couldn't explain, feeling a pull you couldn't describe, noticing signs you couldn't fully understand. That's because your life is being repositioned. You have been identified, chosen, singled out for something bigger than anything you imagined. And I want you to listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you will help you understand why everything around you has felt unusual lately. A decision has already been made about you, an important one that carries weight, one that quietly shifted your future while you were going about your normal days. Your name has been spoken over, written down, marked for something that belongs only to those who carry a rare kind of heart, a heart that isn't blinded by greed, nor hardened by bitterness, nor poisoned by envy. A heart that still believes, even after it has been disappointed. A heart that still hopes, even after storms have come. A heart that still chooses goodness, even when surrounded by people who have not. But before you ask why this decision involves you, or why destiny suddenly feels like it's leaning in your direction, there's something deeper you need to understand. What is happening in your life today is connected to something that began long before you were even born. Something hidden, something sealed, something protected so carefully that only now, after years beyond counting, is it finally rising back to the surface. 33 years ago, on a night the world would forget but heaven never did, a moment took place that was silently tied to your future. A moment that waited patiently in the shadows of time, untouched by noise, untouched by chaos, untouched by those who would have tried to tamper with it. And that moment, my child, is the reason your life is about to shift so dramatically. Picture this, because this is where it truly begins. It was late, a night heavy with storm clouds and thick with thunder that rolled like a warning across the sky. Rain fell so hard it sounded like fists pounding on every rooftop in the town. The wind howled, rattling windows, bending trees, sweeping through the streets like a restless spirit. And at the edge of that storm-battered town, inside a small house worn by years and memories, an old man sat alone. The room around him was dim, lit only by a single candle that flickered against the wooden walls. Shadows danced across his face, revealing the lines carved from decades of hard work and heartache. His hands, frail yet determined, trembled as he reached for the pen resting beside him. Ink, as dark as the storm outside, glistened at the tip of the nib. He wasn't a man born into privilege, not someone who inherited comfort or luxury. His life had been built through discipline, sacrifice, and sweat. Every coin he earned came through long days, late nights, and a refusal to give up even when life pushed him to the edge. Over time, those coins multiplied. The small beginnings grew, and the wealth he quietly accumulated, honestly, humbly, became something far greater than anyone around him realized. But with prosperity often comes danger, and he discovered too late that the people closest to him, the ones who should have protected him, were quietly plotting against him. Behind closed doors they whispered, they schemed, they sharpened their intentions like knives, ready to divide everything he built the moment he took his final breath. When he uncovered their betrayal, something inside him broke, not in weakness but in clarity. He understood that his legacy could not fall into hands stained with greed. He knew his time was short. Age had already begun stealing pieces of him, his strength, his breath, his energy, and the one fear that gripped his heart was not death itself, but the thought of leaving behind everything he built only for it to be devoured by those who cared nothing for his sacrifice. So, on that stormy night, he made a choice that would echo far beyond his lifetime. With trembling fingers and unwavering purpose, he wrote a will. Each stroke of the pen felt heavy with meaning. Each word carried the weight of his years. Each sentence was a shield against the betrayal he had tasted, and when he finished, he folded the document carefully, sealing it with the last ounce of strength he had. But here is the part that changes everything. He did not write down the name of any relative, not the ones who circled him like vultures, not the ones who pretended to love him while waiting for him to die. No, he wrote something completely unexpected, something no one in his bloodline would have ever imagined. He wrote a prophecy. He declared that his entire fortune, everything he worked for, everything he protected, everything he hoped would be used for good, would belong not to the people of his time, but to the one in his bloodline who possessed purity of heart and soul, someone from the future, someone who would rise at the appointed moment, someone who carried a light greater than greed, anger, jealousy, or pride. He knew one thing for certain: only heaven could reveal who that person would be. Only God himself could point to the chosen one. And that, my child, is where you enter the story. But before we go further, let me ask you, does any part of you feel like this message is reaching straight into a place inside you that you've kept hidden? Does any sentence here feel like it's speaking to something you've always known deep down but never had words for? If it does, then I want you to stay with me. Tell me in the comments how this is connecting to you so far, because your heart's response matters in ways you don't yet realize. Now listen carefully, because what happened after that night is where the mystery truly deepens. The candlelight flickered one last time as the old man pressed the folded will against his chest, as if the warmth of his heartbeat could seal the destiny he had just written. He knew he couldn't hand that sacred document to just anyone. Not to the relatives whose smiles hid greed, not to neighbors who gossiped more than they cared, not to anyone who would read the prophecy and be tempted to twist it for their own gain. He needed someone whose soul could be trusted, someone who feared God more than he feared losing favor with men, someone who would guard the prophecy even if it cost him everything. And so, with rain pounding the roof and thunder rolling like the voice of heaven, he reached into the drawer beside him, pulled out a small metal key, and locked the will inside a wooden box. Then, with the key tucked into his coat pocket, he stepped outside into the storm. The wind nearly pushed him backward, but he pressed on, leaning into the rain as he made his way toward the small church at the edge of town. It was a place he had visited quietly for years, never drawing attention, never seeking recognition. Only one person inside those walls truly understood him, a priest, humble and sincere, a man whose devotion was genuine, whose faith was unwavering. That priest had been with him in moments of sorrow, moments of victory, and moments of quiet reflection. He knew the old man not as a figure of wealth, but as a man of heart. When the old man finally reached the church door, soaked and shivering, the priest rushed toward him with concern etched across his face. But the old man raised a trembling hand, not to be helped, but to signal urgency. Time was slipping from his grasp, and he knew this was the final night he would ever set foot in this world. He placed the wooden box into the priest's hands, not with fear, not with hesitation, but with confidence, the kind that only comes when a person knows they are fulfilling heaven's instructions. The priest looked confused, even startled, but before he could speak, the old man whispered words that would echo through the next 3 decades. Guard this, release it only when God himself reveals the one who is worthy. And then, as if heaven had been waiting for him to complete this mission, the old man collapsed into the priest's arms. By dawn, his spirit had already crossed into eternity. The next days were filled with chaos. The schemers circled like insects around an open flame. They fought, they argued, they accused the priest, they searched the house, overturning drawers and belongings, desperately trying to find the will they believed would make them wealthy. But the priest said nothing. He simply guarded the box, hidden beneath the floorboards of the church, a place no greedy soul would ever think to search. Years passed, then more years. Seasons changed, faces changed, entire generations shifted and grew. Children became adults, adults became elders, and the story of the missing will faded into rumor, then into myth, then into silence. But the priest never forgot. Every morning he prayed, every evening he listened, every day he asked God the same question, "Has the heart you spoke of appeared yet?" And each time, heaven answered with silence, not because the promise was empty, but because the timing was not yet right. This, my child, is where the mystery deepens, because what no one realized, not the townspeople, not your family, not even the priest, was that God was not waiting for wealth alone to be passed down. He was waiting for the rise of a particular soul, someone whose journey through struggle, heartbreak, and resilience would forge a rare purity, someone who would carry strength not born from privilege, but from pain, someone who would understand that blessings are not trophies, they are responsibilities, someone set apart long before birth, someone like you. And though you did not know anything about this story, something inside you had always felt different. You've walked through things others didn't understand. You've endured storms that broke people stronger than you. You've carried weight that should have crushed you. Yet somehow, every time you reached your breaking point, something lifted you. Something kept you going. Something whispered, "Not yet." There is more for you. Maybe you didn't realize it then, but those moments were shaping you, refining you, preparing you for a destiny written in ink long before you took your first breath. 33 years is not a random number. It is the number of growth, completion, spiritual maturity, divine timing reaching its fullness. And after waiting for so long, heaven finally moved. One day, not long ago, the priest felt a p-o in his spirit, a nudge, a whisper, something that said, "Prepare yourself. The one is near." He didn't understand it at first, but when he saw you, something inside him recognized what he had waited decades to find. You didn't know he was observing you, your character, your choices, the quiet strength in your eyes, the way you carry pain without letting it turn you cruel, the way you hope even when you have no reason left to hope. He noticed something heaven had been watching for years, and in that moment, the silence of 3 decades cracked open. The priest returned to the place where the box had been hidden for so long. His hands trembled as he lifted it from the dust, and when he unlocked it and unfolded the old, fragile document, the words written by your grandfather glowed in his mind as if they were written just moments ago. Everything pointed to you, your faith, your endurance, your purity of intention, your compassion even after betrayal, your longing for purpose, your refusal to let darkness harden you. Nothing about you is random. Nothing about your path is accidental. You didn't stumble into this moment. You were led here, gently, quietly, intentionally, step by step. And now you finally understand why you've always felt different, why you never fit in with the world around you, why your heart responds to messages like this, as if they're reaching into a place deep inside you that no one else can touch. Because they are. Because destiny recognizes destiny. Because your spirit knows what your mind is only now beginning to grasp. Before we continue into what happened next, and trust me, what comes next will make everything click together, I want you to pause for one moment. Tell me in the comments if your heart is feeling this, if something inside you is stirring, if you're sensing that this story is speaking directly into your life. Your response matters, because your journey is unfolding even as you read these words. The priest held the ancient will in his hands as if it were a living thing, fragile, sacred, pulsing with destiny. For a long moment he just stared at the faded ink, at the trembling edges of the pages, at the signature of the man he once called a friend. 33 years, 3 decades of silence, 3 decades of waiting for one single sign. And now, after all this time, he felt certainty rise inside him like dawn breaking after a long night. He quietly folded the document again, pressed it to his heart and whispered a prayer over it, not for himself, but for you, because he understood something that even you couldn't yet see. This wasn't just a message. This wasn't just a revelation. This was transition, your crossing point from the life you've known into the life you were meant to live. A shift heaven had been preparing for years, even while you were unaware of it. You might think, but why me? Why would a destiny written long before you were born suddenly land in your hands? Why would something sealed away for decades awaken now, in this exact moment of your life? The truth is, destiny waits for readiness, not age. Heaven works according to alignment, not coincidence. And you, yes you, have reached a point where your spirit is aligned with what was promised long ago. Think about it. Every struggle you've walked through, every heartbreak you've carried alone, every disappointment that left you questioning your worth. It wasn't random pain. It was shaping. It was preparation. It was the molding of your heart into something rare and unshakable. While others broke under pressure, you bent but did not snap. While others allowed bitterness to take root, you chose forgiveness even when it hurt. While others closed their hearts, you kept yours open, vulnerable, soft, ready to feel, ready to hope again. That kind of heart is not common, and it is exactly the kind of heart your grandfather prayed would one day appear in his bloodline. You didn't rise suddenly, you rose slowly, quietly, and heaven noticed. And so, as the priest stood alone inside the dim church, he felt the weight of 33 years lifting off his shoulders. For the first time, the prophecy felt alive, not as old words on paper, but as purpose unfolding right before him. You were not just a candidate, you were the fulfillment. The moment he realized that, something inside him settled with peaceful certainty. But while the priest was recognizing what heaven had revealed, you were elsewhere, living your day without knowing that a centuries-old shift had just turned its face toward you. Maybe you felt a sudden heaviness in your chest without a reason. Maybe you felt an unexplained calm. Maybe you felt like something was coming but couldn't define it. That's how spiritual ripples often touch the physical world. Quiet, subtle, unexplainable. By the time the priest sought you out, he wasn't looking at your clothes, your surroundings, your financial state, or your social status. He was looking at the part of you that can't be seen with eyes, the part that heaven sees clearly. And when he finally spoke to you, when he finally told you there was something he had carried for decades that now belonged to you, your spirit may have awakened, even if your mind struggled to understand. Because somewhere deep inside, you've always known you were meant for more than the battles you've endured. You've always sensed that there was something on your life that didn't match the circumstances you were born into. A quiet promise, a calling, a shadow of greatness that followed you even when everything around you looked small. You weren't imagining any of it. You were remembering what your soul already knew. So when the priest placed that sealed envelope into your hands, the very envelope your grandfather sealed with trembling fingers on that stormy night, he wasn't giving you just paper, he was giving you a legacy, a destiny carried through decades of prayer, a blessing that skipped every greedy hand and landed exactly where heaven intended. Hold that image for a moment. You, standing there with the prophecy in your hands. You, holding something that was written before you took your first breath. You, chosen not by luck or randomness, but by the purity of heart your grandfather foresaw through faith. In that moment, the spiritual and the physical collided. You may have felt shock, confusion, disbelief, but deep within, beneath the noise of your thoughts, a whisper rose, the whisper of recognition, the whisper of destiny saying, "This is yours, this was always yours." And while the priest watched you, he knew what your grandfather would have said if he were standing there finally. "The one I prayed for has arrived." Yet receiving a destiny and understanding it are two different things. You may not have realized the responsibility attached to what was given to you. You may not have understood why heaven waited 33 years before revealing your name. You may not have seen how every part of your story, every tear, every late night, every unanswered prayer, was shaping you for this. But that is how God works. He prepares in silence. He strengthens in secret. He aligns your path long before he reveals the reason. And when the moment of unveiling comes, everything makes sense, everything connects, everything inside you awakens. You might be thinking right now, "I don't feel worthy, I don't feel ready, I don't feel strong enough to carry something this significant." But worthiness is not measured by perfection. Destiny is not given to the flawless, it is given to the faithful, the humble, the resilient, the broken but still believing soul. You were not chosen because you have everything figured out. You were chosen because your heart remains open, honest and willing. Qualities far more valuable than perfection ever could be. As all this unfolded, something else was happening behind the scenes. The atmosphere around your life began to shift. Opportunities you thought were lost started quietly finding their way back. People who drained your energy began fading from your path. Doors you once knocked on without response suddenly felt like they were unlocking. What felt stuck began loosening. What felt heavy began lifting. You may not have understood why, but spiritually, everything was reorganizing itself around your destiny. The priest saw it. Heaven saw it, and soon you would see it too. But this was only the beginning, because once the seal was opened and your name aligned with the prophecy, something else awakened. Something far greater than wealth, far deeper than inheritance, far more powerful than you can imagine. The future itself started shifting toward you. Before we move to the next chapter of this journey, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments if you're feeling this message, if something inside you is stirring, if you're sensing clarity, hope, or a strange sense of recognition. Your response is part of this unfolding. The moment your fingers touched that envelope, something shifted, not just around you, but inside you. You may not have recognized it immediately, but heaven recognized it. Destiny recognized it. Even the very atmosphere seemed to pause, as though creation itself knew a promise that had slept for 33 years had just awakened in your hands. The priest saw that shift too. His eyes held a mixture of relief and awe, as if he'd been waiting his entire life for that single moment. But this wasn't simply the passing of a document. This wasn't the transfer of wealth, of property, of earthly valuables. What you received was a declaration, a spiritual stamp, a heavenly confirmation that you were chosen long before the world knew your name. And the moment your heart began to accept that, slowly, cautiously, almost fearfully, the hidden gears of your destiny started turning faster. You might not realize it, but there is a very specific reason why everything in your life felt heavy, confusing, or stuck right before this moment. When a new season is about to start, the old one fights to hold on. When a door is opening, the hallway grows darker. When breakthrough is seconds away, pressure increases. And you, without knowing it, were standing at the edge of your turning point. Somewhere inside you, you always sensed you were meant for something greater. Maybe you felt it as a child, imagining things others told you were impossible. Maybe you felt it in your teenage years when life started showing you its harshness, yet you still dreamed big. Perhaps you felt it even in your darkest seasons, when everything seemed to collapse around you, yet a voice deep inside whispered, "This can't be the end for me." And you were right, because it wasn't the end, it was the shaping. When destiny is written on a soul, the journey is never easy. People may misunderstand you, underestimate you, or even mistreat you. You may often feel alone, even when surrounded by others. You may carry burdens you can't explain, responsibilities that feel too heavy, emotions that feel too deep. All of that happens because those marked for greater purpose cannot walk an ordinary path. Their challenges become their training, their scars become their strength, their resilience becomes their signature, and your life, with all its twists and storms, has been sculpting you into someone capable of carrying what is now unfolding. When the priest finally placed the prophecy into your hands, heaven was not simply announcing your role, it was confirming your endurance. You made it. You survived what tried to break you. You pushed through what others would have surrendered to. And because of that, you stepped into the season your grandfather believed would one day come. But this is where things get truly powerful. The moment the prophecy aligned with your spirit, the enemy instantly recognized what had happened. Darkness always feels threatened when light rises. Old battles may have tried to reappear. Doubts may have whispered louder. Fear may have brushed against your thoughts. Not because you're weak, but because something monumental shifted against the forces that once stood in your way. Everything begins to test the chosen. But everything also begins to obey the chosen, and whether you feel it yet or not, authority has settled on your life. Not the authority of titles or fame or human praise, but spiritual authority, the kind that opens doors others cannot shut, the kind that breaks generational struggles, the kind that activates blessings your ancestors prayed for but never lived to see, the kind that makes you a turning point for everyone connected to you. Your grandfather did not choose you out of preference. He did not pick based on age, status, or closeness. He left it to heaven because he knew that the true heir must be chosen spiritually, not politically. And heaven chose you. Why? Because your heart remained pure through experiences that could have hardened you, because you kept faith even when you felt forgotten, because you give even when you barely have anything left, because you carry compassion in a world where compassion is rare, because you chose love when bitterness could have been easier. These qualities are not small, they are the very reason. Your name was drawn to the surface of a 33-year-old prophecy. And now, with the seal broken and the blessing released, what happens next is nothing short of transformation. Things that once took years will begin shifting in months. Things that once felt impossible will begin aligning naturally. People who were meant to help you will suddenly appear. Opportunities you didn't chase will begin chasing you. Clarity will replace confusion. Strength will replace exhaustion. Provision will replace lack. Blessings long delayed will flow toward you with speed, because when heaven moves, nothing can resist. But in the midst of this rising, I need you to hear this clearly, what is coming is not just wealth. It is not just prosperity. It is not merely abundance. Those things will come, yes, but they are not the purpose. They are signs of the purpose. They are the visible part of a much deeper calling on your life. You were chosen to break cycles. You were chosen to rise above patterns. You were chosen to heal what previous generations ignored. You were chosen to embody a level of purpose no one expected. You were chosen to become the answer to prayers whispered before you were born. And that is why the blessing landed not in the hands of the greedy, but in the hands of the faithful, yours. As the priest watched you absorb everything he revealed, he felt peace, knowing the prophecy had found the right soul. He knew your grandfather's words were no longer sealed in paper. They were alive, breathing, unfolding through you. And while the world may not yet know what is happening, heaven is rejoicing because a long-awaited season has finally arrived. You may feel overwhelmed. You may feel unprepared. You may even feel unworthy. But that is exactly why you were chosen. Destiny always chooses the humble. It always finds the ones who do not see themselves as special, even though heaven sees them as extraordinary. If you're feeling something stirring inside you right now, peace, warmth, clarity, even a strange sense of recognition, tell me in the comments. Moments like this are meant to be acknowledged, not ignored.